Hi everyone. We're going to wait for another few seconds before we get started. Please hang in there and we'll be back with you shortly. All right, good morning and good afternoon everyone, and welcome to our webinar today titled Growing Revenue from Your Existing Customers, which will discuss the common business problems faced by many companies, whether they're large or small, and we want to talk about how big data analytics can help address some of these challenges. But first, a little word about our company, Opera Solutions. We are a global provider of advanced analytics software that address the persistent problem of scaling big data analytics. Today's presenters are Lax Srinivasan, sitting next to me. He's co-CEO of Opera Solutions, and myself, George Smeen, speaking. I'm head of product marketing. And Lax oversees Opera Solutions business operations globally and brings a first-hand view of Fortune 500 companies' challenges and how they are addressing them with big data analytics to boost revenue and profits. Lax brings over 20 years of big data analytics experience to this role, having applied data science in the past in fields of marketing, credit risk management, and customer portfolio management across different industries like consumer banking, travel and hospitality, capital markets, mortgage, telecom, and retail. Lax formerly held positions with Fair Isaac, and he was previously CEO of Expense Advisor, a startup in the electronic bill payment, and before that at Booz Allen and Syntel Inc. Myself, George Smeen, I'm the one speaking. I run product marketing for Opera Solutions, responsible for go-to-market execution and product strategy, market research, positioning, and content. And prior to my role here, I was VP General Manager of Mailbox Provider Products at ReturnPath, an email data solution provider, where I managed data acquisitions and fed the necessary data for the analytics of the company's products and managed product line and delivery to Mailbox Provider partners. I previously held different roles in product management and marketing at companies like, technology companies primarily, like Nominum, Tellme, Netscape, and started my career in software development at Oracle. All right. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll get started by, let me move the slides here. There we go. One back. We'll get started with what we want to achieve in today's webinar, and the topic of growing revenue is obviously on everyone's mind. But we wanted to ensure that we get to address some key questions, so you will walk away with having these questions answered. First, we want to address on why focusing on driving revenue growth from existing customers rather than prioritizing new ones. We want to introduce the concept of aspirational value, which is a metric that we ended up using in our framework, which we will discuss, and talk about how companies can apply it to support their revenue growth objectives. Then we'll compare and contrast between where companies are falling short in properly engaging customers, and this is the elephant in the room type of topic where we will be suggesting changes and overhauling the approach in general. And then we'll discuss how big data analytics map to a framework around customer engagement and how you can extract the right insights to help orchestrate your operations for optimum engagement that leads to revenue growth. And lastly, we'll present you with a few examples on large companies that have generated strong incremental growth by using our Signal Hub platform and following our framework overall. Okay, the structure of the presentation today we'll start by setting the context and diving into the metric around aspirational value of a customer. Then we'll review the framework that ties business objectives and activities with underlying technology, and then cover the approach using a software platform to extract the insights to support your business activities using a few examples, and then we'll conclude with Q&A. Okay? I'm going to transfer it over to Lax now to lead and talk about classic symptoms of revenue growth challenges in companies.
Yeah, great. Thank you, George. Good afternoon, everybody. So here, as you can see in the slides, clearly, as George said, revenue growth is important for pretty much everybody these days, with disruptions all around us. And it can take different forms and shapes. Even if you're in a very fast-growing industry, you may be growing slower than your competitors. You may have reached a plateau, and you may be falling behind your targets. And you could also be in a situation where your market share is shrinking because you're getting disrupted, and even in a healthy industry. So, of course, there are things that could be a lot worse than revenue declines. But we want to address today is how do you have a transformational and a very holistic framework that can focus on revenue growth, that can help businesses to avoid really bad outcomes. So if you look at how to drive or grow revenue, there are obviously two ways. One is we can go and acquire new customers. And in fact, this is a well-established practice in companies. And with recent developments in advertising, mobile, and social, there's a lot of advanced and sophisticated functionality and vendors and solutions all around helping companies how to do audience profiling, targeting, doing advertising in many forms. And this is where there's a lot of focus. Though this is one area, it is expensive and time-consuming, but necessary to do. And in terms of the other option, which is how could you actually grow revenue from existing customers? And what that requires is you'll have to have a very good set of profiling of your existing customers, and you have to have a good way of engaging them once you're able to profile them, to be able to target them. And most important of all, how do you actually do that over time in a sustained way? And so, in effect, our hypothesis through experience is a lot of money and technology and organizational energy goes to acquiring new customers, and very, very little goes towards growing revenue from existing customers. We believe reacquiring almost your existing customers requires much less effort and expense, and have a much better likelihood of achieving the outcomes. And so there are lots of different ways of growing revenue from existing customers. And I'm sure we have all heard LTV and CLV, customer lifetime value, customer lifetime value, and so on. And you may not have heard aspirational value, which is something we have been pioneering, and we wanted to introduce you to this metric today that we think could be the divining rod for really how do you orchestrate, sequence, prioritize all your business activities around growing revenue from existing customers. So the aspirational value is, though there are wallet share and other type of metric that is out there that you could get at through market research, we believe aspirational value is something you can derive and based on actual behavior of your own customers with yourself. And the way we are defining them is peak historical levels. It's really your high water mark over the last year or some defined historical time window. and that is something every business can calculate on every customer. This is not a guesswork anymore. This is something you can actually derive using data. And so by the end of this presentation, you will understand why this metric is almost going to become a first principle for business. So getting a little bit more into defining aspirational value, and what I've already described, what this chart is showing you is there's a point in time T that you see where the blue line meets the green line. And so this is could be one customer, this could be a segment of customers. What we are showing is this particular segment has had a ramp up, got to a peak, and then it is coming down. If you do not do anything, they're going to on a declining path. And what the aspirational value gets at is really how do you get them back to the path that they were on before they started fading. So the green line shows the implied trend of spend your customers if you leave them untreated, whereas the orange line represents the opportunity ahead of you to correct the trajectory and bring it to the aspirational value. So what you try to achieve is to maximize your revenues to be as close to possible as the peak spend. And so what you're seeing on this chart is really what we call the aspirational gap. And what that gap shows you is really the headroom that you have today in your customer base, latent, unexploited, right under your nose, that you could actually act on and with a lot more certainty. And that's really how we were able to pioneer how can companies transform using this metric of how they are managing existing customers and how they are prioritizing and sequencing all the business activities around customer engagement and growth.
Okay, thanks, Lex. And you could say also that this is really you're hitting two birds in one stone, because this really serves as a vehicle for retaining customers and achieving customer loyalty, but also getting them to spend at that maximum level of the aspirational value.
That's exactly right.
Good. All right. Now let's take a look at common practices today and where companies that do perform some level of analytics are falling short and where they can make some corrections. If you think about companies facing revenue growth challenges, and if they were to rethink about their approach to big data analytics, they need to do two things, right? They need to accurately portray their customers, and they need to have a more effective targeting mechanism to target their customers. And in the traditional approach that we've witnessed and we've seen, it hasn't been very adequate. And what you see is that companies may formulate customer profiles that develop certain approaches that are incomplete or outdated. They often deal with static customer data, and they're not getting the complete insight. And if they do perform when they do perform campaigns, and they do a lot of it, they're performing episodic campaigns. They basically painting a broader brush of their customer segments, and every campaign usually requires long timelines to scale the campaign and the use cases and to get them right. Now, how do you close the aspirational gap? And this is with the new approach. And to be effective in customer analytics to drive revenue, you need basically a level of technology that would deliver you an accurate, holistic, and a continuously refined picture of your customers. That includes data enrichment from either within your data sets or from external data sets, and you need to improve the targeting as well. And enable your data scientists to generate the right intelligence to share it across the different applications you may have in a scalable way. And we're talking about applications that may interact or act as touch points with your existing customer base. Let's take a look at an example here and in rethinking the approach to customer engagement. And here, this is a hypothetical conceptual model illustrating all elements of a customer, and there may be some companies or others that may require this level of detail or attribute collection on a particular end customer, but most of them may not require all these elements. However, in this particular case, if you take a look at the image that you have in the center, we may be able to tell that this is a woman. We assume that's the case. We think that she has certain needs, and she's a young mother in the market for a car purchase. We're thinking it's maybe a red minivan in this case. We also know something or a few things about her taste, her propensity to buy Hello Kitty goods or products, in this case a backpack, and possibly herself or her family interests are around golf, and she has a desire to vacation in beautiful European cities. So for companies, despite their efforts to develop an insight into their customers, you're getting an incomplete picture here of who that customer is in terms of their needs and their need states. And the data that you gather, the data that you have at hand or that you're able to bring to bear in order to formulate an effective approach to drive sales, retention, repeat sales, and customer evangelism is very, very important and plays a very, very important factor. So if we continue that gathering effort, you'll see now that the picture is being developed on a continuous basis, and you can improve your targeting, realizing that this woman in particular is looking at the car purchase, is interested really in a red vehicle, though she has a preference for hip type vehicles, and maybe here we're getting it right or we're getting it wrong, but maybe she wants like a 1960s VW wagon. And we corrected our assumptions since some of our data shows her interested in a warm beach vacation rather than European cities, as an example. We also corrected other assumptions over her taste from Hello Kitty backpacks to fashionable totes, and with golf still on our radar for this household, we're still showing maybe golfing shoes for her spouse. Now the result, as you paint the complete picture on a continuous basis, you're getting a full view of what this person is or who that person is and what they want. And with a complete picture in place, you realize the preference for this young mother is to own a hip red car, not necessarily a minivan, and she's in the market. She likes to shop for name brand luxury handbags, has no interest for golf in her household. Instead, she needs running footwear. And we can reconcile her interest between the beach vacation and European cities with a European theme where she can go to the French Riviera in Nice, France, and enjoy herself and her family. Now, the difference here in the approach we're reviewing isn't the what end result is, it's the how. Because every company wants to achieve a more accurate picture of each of their customer, and many companies are already taking steps to do some parts of this. So they can still develop a partial picture without an underlying analytics technology like what we're proposing with Signal Hub from Opera Solutions, and we'll cover shortly. But the time and effort required to do so via other approaches make those approaches impractical, and we're going to tell you why in a sec. However, we're not talking about not only assembling the complete picture, also we're going to talk about building the longitudinal view of your customer over time to understand their needs and need states, which you can build as you progress. So let's talk now about how to tie it all together and where we can bring in big data analytics to a framework using the metric that we just discussed, the aspirational value. So first, we want to present the customer engagement framework, and this is a classic type of model here at the top where you're seeing we're describing a customer lifecycle stage, and we're referring to it as the customer journey. And underneath it, below it, we want to introduce the technology layers, starting with big data analytics and the platform that we're discussing, and the synthesized data and insights that support and enable business decisions. We refer to this as a customer intelligence layer. And in simplistic terms, the data and workflow from analytics create the intelligence. These are the insights and the intelligence shapes business actions, and business actions orchestrate the customer experience. It's an easy flow. So over the next few slides, we'll dive deeper into the customer lifecycle stages and business activities and the supporting technology layers. So let's zoom in into what the customer journey is. So as we look more closely into the customer journey, it's characterized by the acquisition activity and the customer development activity, which usually culminates in a climactic point, which is the customer, a catalyzed purchase. And we referred earlier to this dichotomy of customer stages, but we shouldn't be treating them as opposite ends of a spectrum. We often focus on the culminating point of the transaction, but most of the business activities and sometimes investments even go towards supporting the customer acquisition, such as driving awareness, generating desire, etc. And what we're advocating here is that these activities apply across the entire life cycle, even for existing customers. And of course, you cannot ignore the customer development stages because every business starts there, but you have to be able to take into account good support, loyalty, and advocacy. So underneath it all, a business is often organized by several discrete business activities that orchestrate the customer journey. I mean, you think of product development, and then you have a product you want to push. You think about the offer development, the campaign behind it, the campaign execution, optimization, then sales. And then you think about the customer service angle, the technical support, if any, the evangelism, the education, customer care, and enhancements. And then you have the order fulfillment, offers, omni-channel performance, the offer targeting and optimization. All of these activities are really meant to support the customer lifecycle, and you want to be able to have the technology that addresses all of these business activities across those different stages. So to support the customer journey in this framework, we want to be able to extract the right insights to feed into the business activities. And in this particular case here, what we're describing about this particular example of this woman, let's say her name is Mary, and let's say she can spend $5,000 a year on a product category. What can we do to learn more to capture the maximum of that spend? So the technology needs to bring out the details of that customer, and what we need to do is build a full portrait of that customer and their need states. And it has to go beyond the demographics, understanding the different personas and interests, what we're calling here the psychographics, and understand the need and need states such that we can predict future purchasing behavior. So we're not necessarily pushing, we're not dealing with promoting products based on what's in our supply, but really understanding the demand to really match the supply. And lastly, by understanding the customer curriculum to package the right offers at the right time through the right channels, then you end up hitting the right note in providing them what they need, and you can make sure that you're capturing that wallet share and achieving your objectives. So let's go back to the customer engagement framework for a minute. Most companies that are applying big data analytics to their customer data now have been doing it for many years. This is not necessarily new. We're using maybe different terms, but most of these companies still do not generate meaningful intelligence from that data as a scalable operational capability. And I'm emphasizing scalable here because this is very, very important. Why? Because as organizations mature, they amass multiple analytics applications, and that's what you're seeing underneath in the magenta color. And they continue to work with these in parallel to generate different analytical insights. And this approach will get you results, will give you the right answers, don't take me wrong. But the extensive data preparation behind it and the integration is so manual and time-intensive that analytics team can deliver a very high volume of completed analyses across the entire organization. So what is the business impact, you may say here? Well, the complexity of such an approach diminishes the meaningful insights, and in a way it denies the organization the level of scalability for its advanced analytic efforts, and it doesn't help the business drive targeted business outcomes. It becomes more of a disjointed effort. So you may be asking if there's a way to eliminate the friction between the raw data input, the analysis, the analytical output, and business decisions and tangible value. And the obvious answer is yes, there is. and it involves kind of rethinking the platform approach to big data analytics and thinking about scalability. In this slide here, what we want to talk about is what we at Opera Solutions provide as a unique platform approach to integrating and accelerating what we call the end-to-end analytics workflow, allowing companies to extract the right customer and market insight and package it for consumption and reuse. Reuse is very, very important here, and share it as a synthesized information across the business. And our product, which will you hear us mention, called Signal Hub, it really revolutionizes big data analytics by reimagining the data stack and inserting a new technical construct that we call signal layer that produces the desired customer intelligence layer from a business perspective. And so the signal layer is a collection or a repository of synthesized intelligence that an organization creates in the form of signals, and it sits between the enterprise's data layer and the runtime applications that orchestrate the business activities and support the customer journey. And it can serve, the signal layer can scale and serve staff across departments too. It's not just for runtime applications or production environments, but individuals and business analysts, financial analysts, or others can use and access it to really run and perform ad hoc exercises as they need to. So the desired objective here is to create a blueprint for analytics that ties business initiatives and activities with the technical platform. And the abstraction of insights through this customer intelligence layer helps achieve that. It consists of the signals that are generated out of the data and is rooted in a workflow based on our Signal Hub platform that consists of data enrichment, signals, descriptive and predictive, segments and need states, the longitudinal curricula of a customer, test and learn, iteration, and measurements. And let's explore each one right now. And this blueprint, by the way, we've tested it, and Lex will pick up from me shortly and talk about some real-world examples in how they applied it. So the data enrichment helps you uncover hidden information and paints a complete picture on a steady state basis. So on a continuous basis, you're always going to have the most accurate picture of your customers. The signals tell you not only about historical needs of a customer, which is very, very important. As we mentioned, aspirational value is based on historical peak spend. But here we're trying to get and understand how customers behaved in the past, and we want to be able to get a predictive sense of where they will be headed in the future. The segments and need states give you the flexibility to cluster and identify cohorts that have similar patterns of behaviors. This really allows you to identify your opportunity map by assessing the aspirational value gap to some different level of segmentation based on behaviors. And then the longitudinal curricula gives you a persona for each need state, tactics, offer, channels, and timing. And the test and learn consists of self-learning or trained learning system to rapidly adjust based on the response. And we're going to talk about that some more using a real-world example. And lastly, you measure and track the progress across behavioral segments. At this stage, let's talk about some of the examples of companies that have applied this framework, and I want to transfer it over to Lax, who learned these firsthand and worked with our customers. But first, I want to introduce to you Signal Hub. You've heard me mention the product, but let's talk a little bit about it and tell you what it is. Signal Hub allows companies to really turbocharge their customer analytics activities. It has an amazing impact in the enterprise compared to traditional analytics approaches, and it scales. When we talk about it scaling, it's not just about machine performance and computation performance, but really it scales to handle and support business operations with multiple production applications, use cases, and departments across an enterprise. It is really the software layer that gets you the extraction of the insights from all of your data assets to build that customer intelligence layer, which technically we refer to as the signal layer. And it consists of your customers' digital portraits, their need states, and the output to manage the fine-grained automated targeting. Signal Hub really gives you a level of accuracy with machine learning capabilities to create a continuously learning system. It reuses the signals built on algorithms and statistical models, and it scales technically and from a business level, as I mentioned earlier. Now, it consists of 4 components. I don't know if you can see them in the slide here, but there are the integrated development environment, which is a workbench environment for developing end-to-end analytics. It offers a rich GUI, graphical user interface, that allows your statisticians and data scientists to interact with all the functionality and capability that Signal Hub offers. The Knowledge Center, it's an interactive signal management system that allows citizen data scientists to enable both model to use the models and easily access and explore the signals across the enterprise. And then you have the other components, which are the Signal Hub Manager, which allows you to monitor and manage the workflow, the scheduling, the performance of the signals, of the data itself, and of the system performance. And last but not least, the server itself is the processing entity of all of the data across the different thousand signals, and it exports the signals to external application. Basically, the Signal Hub server is really what is running in production and acts as the signal layer. All right, I'd like to transfer it over to Lax now to talk about a couple of case studies. First, starting with a very large cross-category retailer, and second, talking about a global wireless telecom operator. Lax, on to you.
Great, thank you, George. So let's just talk about the retailer. Just gives you the situation. It's a large Fortune 100 retailer with millions of customers in thousands of locations, and they operate in multiple retail categories and have grown increasingly mature and saturated with competitors offering similar products. And so having a differentiation and engaging the customers in a sustained way, despite having loyalty programs, was a real challenge. That is the business situation. In terms of data and insights, of course, this company had large volumes of data, terabytes of data, and had in-house analytics teams that generated insights. But despite having that ability to really have them continuously updated and produced in production, therefore they have the best insights at any point in time, was a challenge. And also, how do you actually take that and operationalize it to target customer base in terms of different personas, their needs, different trigger points, so you can provide the right message and the offer, whether they are at the store or online or different stages of engagement or the call center. So the implications we found were they were having a revenue gap, and without really fundamentally transforming the underlying customer insights production and an ongoing targeting mechanism. So incremental improvements in any of those was not going to be the answer. So they were looking to how do you transform the entire way the customers are engaged, everything from, as I said, how do you profile customers to how do you target them. So with that, when Opera went in, what we were able to accomplish is a very clear set of tangible results. Through more accurate customer portrait through signals, and a much better machine learning based targeting environment, we were able to show $120 million of incremental revenues. And by the way, this was done on a very, very scientific controlled test manner. And within first 12 months of going in to be able to show that and also improve margins. It's always easy to grow revenue if you're just promoting the hell out of the products. So you have to do this in a way your promotions are also managed and optimized and given to the right people to insert the right behavior so that you can close the aspirational gap of a particular customer or a particular segment. So with that, we are on track to close the aspirational value gap in about 3 to 4 years. And for this retailer, that aspirational gap was about $15 billion. That's why you see the 3 to 4 year horizon to be able to close that gap. So plenty of opportunity to just grow revenue from existing customers. And a couple other things we're able to do here is also improve the quality of business decisions. They were able to predict store trips better, to be able to trigger the right offers, and to be able to come up with hypotheses for tactics to move customers from one need state to another, and also to be able to close that gap. So they built a variety of capabilities that improve their business decisions. And most importantly, from a data science and technology or IT perspective, within 6 months, we're able to operationalize the Signal Hub, start to generate signals, and also establish a new analytics workflow that is sustaining all the assets and the foundations that we have put in place. And if you go into the details, so what is happening here is the retailer recognized that the current analytics and the marketing approach wasn't working, and marketing campaigns were episodic. That means given a product, what customers was the paradigm, and they were also not effectively using the data they already had. That means ability to look at what's working and what's not. And also there is no way to understand how the different rule sets or the targets and the offers are working against different customer segments. So it was really difficult to not only target, but also understand what is working, not working. With Signal Hub, we were able to come in and operationalize a set of signals and deconstruct a lot of business tactics and strategy into analytic assets that could be utilized, and be able to implement solutions through machine learning and other type of analytics to operationalize the signal layer. So the net effect was the business teams were able to manage customers or customer segments over time using a curriculum. Remember, the objective is to close the aspirational gap, not to run campaigns and do much more effective campaigns. Here it's about understanding customers and having a set of insights and tactics and a test and learn closed loop capability to be able to do this on a continuous basis. And most important of all, they were now able to measure P&L to the individual customer or the customer segment level, which again helps to know what you should stop doing and where you should scale up and do more of. So all of these are capabilities that business teams were able to do. In terms of data science teams, we cut down the amount of time it takes to build analytic models because you don't have to start from raw data all the time. You have a set of signals that are operationalized in signal layer, continuously updated. So you're able to build new models almost 1/10 of the time, and you're able to have continuously enriched data and to be able to support all the business activities. Now, in this, let's take one specific area around customer portrait that we talked about. In this particular case study, this is an innovation that we brought in, which is around customer needs. A lot of people do segmentation, which is business heuristics driven or top down, which is important. It's a good starting point. But if you have this capability of big data analytics, you can actually look at transaction data historical. In this case, we looked at 15 plus data sets on 75 million active customers, 10 plus terabytes of data over 36 months of history. We generated 3,000 plus signals and applied advanced clustering on the Signal Hub platform to be able to come up with behavioral segments, somewhere in the 20 to 30 plus segments that you can continuously refine and then to be able to publish to business. And so when we talked about aspirational value, we were able to derive aspirational value for each of these segments that are bottom up and behaviorally driven. And therefore you can decide tactics and targeting and the longitudinal curriculum over time based on each segment. So this was one of the innovations around how do you do customer portrait in a complete and continuous and comprehensive way is what we were able to do on this particular case study. So let's move on to the second one, which is a global wireless company. And another example where we have successfully implemented this framework around aspirational value and built application and runtime analytics using Signal Hub to make the change. So if you look at the business situation here on this, obviously a very large multi-billion-dollar revenue company, 40 million plus subscribers, very mature in the wireless market, and experiencing churn and maximizing customer lifetime value. And so the objectives here were to, number one, arrest the churn and to be able to apply aspirational value metric and to be able to engage customers, to be able to cross-sell, upsell, to be able to close the aspirational gap at the individual customer level. So if you look at what did we accomplish, we reduced churn within a few months. Again, we were able to compare what they were doing business as usual on a control population, and we were able to test these on a test population. So very scientifically driven way to say, yes, this made a difference in churn, and all of that, and maximizing lifetime value of customers, variety of different tactics, you're able to grow revenue by 96 million euros. And in terms of quality business decisions, we were able to put in workflow to be able to understand customers, come up with the right tactic to be able to provide the right offers, and also a self-learning feedback system, which I will talk about very quickly, to be able to understand what's working, not working in the field, to be able to make rapid adjustments. And in terms of more efficient data science, with the library of descriptive and predictive signals corresponding to churn, market spend, customer value, we have now brought down the amount of time it takes to do new use case from months, sometimes a matter of days, and sometimes matter of hours. And of course, the machine learning algorithms were used to the fullest extent here in really coming up with offer assignment, which I will talk about. So if you look at the approach here on the screen, before we went in, the current acquisition and churn campaigns were pretty much ineffective. In fact, they were worse than random. And also, customer acquisition costs were much higher. And also, ability to engage customers and grow revenue from existing ones were pretty much non-existent. And also, this company was dealing with acquisition, retention, cross-sell, upsell, all of them in different silos. And sometimes they would be sending cross-sell, upsell offers to a customer that's already starting to show signs of churn. Instead of stemming what you should do to stem the churn, they were in fact selling them something which probably accelerated the churn. So with Signal Hub, we were able to bring in, again, a set of signals around each customer, bring in data clustering to be able to operationalize the signal layer in the order of about 3,000 plus signals here also. And what that enabled, if you look at the after, the business teams had much more accurate and current picture of the customer that is continuously updated, and they were able to develop different hypotheses and to be able to do different use cases or campaigns really at scale. So what Signal Hub did for them is how do you really scale up the business activities and initiatives so you can try different things to see what works, doesn't work. In terms of data science, it's very similar to what we talked about on the previous case study, which is really a set of existing signals that allows new models to be developed much faster. So if business comes up with a new tactic, new idea, they need to go and create, let's say, a new propensity model for a particular customer segment to buy the next iPhone, they would be able to do that in a matter of days and deploy it with the Signal Hub compared to the old approach, which would have taken them a lot more time. So if you look at, we gave an example in the previous case study of an innovation we did in building customer portrait that are a lot more accurate around need states. Here, the innovation that we want to highlight in this case study is more around how we used machine learning and big data analytics to do effective targeting. So if you look at this picture, typically customers would come up with 4 or 5 offers, they'll use business judgments, and they'll kind of do what we call spray and pray, hope it works. And whereas here, what we try to do is we were able to look at a particular segment, a particular customer or segment of customers, in this particular case, likely churners. And then we were able to look at another profile called heavy users. So these are churners that are heavy users of the wireless service. And to be able to look at their need states and the response matrix, which is the treatment, and to be able to come up with this explore and exploit, we were able to come up with the right offer, which is the incentive coupon, on the right channel. In this case, the picture shows you a text message, to be able to see whether the customer accepted or not, and then have the feedback loop go back to the response matrix and have a machine learning that is continuously looking at what is working in terms of offers and channels against a particular outcome of closing that aspirational gap. And so this is one particular innovation that we have put in and have shown fantastic results, which we shared with you before. And now, we are in the process of scaling this up globally for this client. So that was kind of the completion of the case study, and I'll pass it back to George to wrap up the presentation.
Thanks. So as we conclude here, and before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to kind of cover what we discussed with you today, which is the concept of the aspirational value metric. And as we said earlier, we've been wired to talk about customer lifetime value, to talk about customer acquisition cost, but what we are advocating is introducing this new metric called aspirational value. And we discussed how companies can deliver on this promise. And we also tied it to the customer engagement framework that maps the customer journey with the business activities. And the key to getting that customer framework done successfully is to really tie it to what we're calling the customer intelligence layer, with its underpinning. The technical underpinnings are the signal layer built using a big data analytics platform like our Opera Solutions Signal Hub. And part of what we've made entirely different than a lot of other analytics solutions is that we revolutionized the mechanics of the analytics by making them more scalable and readily available for production environments, and made a huge impact across an entire organization on a continual basis, as we've described in some of these case studies, because it allows you to maintain a steady state of portraits and need states of your customers, and it allows you to orchestrate all the applications that you have, supporting applications that you need to target and engage with these customers across the different touch points. And by the way, we didn't go into details. I think we alluded to it in the case studies in talking about how quickly we're able to generate an ROI and improve revenues. But the implementation of Signal Hub is very, very quick and easy, and production pilots can be completed, in 1 month to 3 months. So in conclusion, before we switch to the Q&A, I just wanted to let you know that we will have an upcoming white paper on the topic of growing revenue from existing customers and aspirational value, so please stay tuned with us. And Lax and I, we thank you for joining us today and listening so far and staying with us till the end of the presentation, and appreciate your participation. We have received a few questions, which we may not be able to answer all of them in the time left in the next 10 minutes, but feel free to reach out to us or visit our website if you have further questions. So if you don't know, some people submitted some questions, but for those of you who do not know, you have the ability to enter and type in your questions through the BrightTalk system, and we'll try to answer the best we can right now. One question, Lax, that came in is saying here, where the aspirational value, is it always based on historical peaks? And why are you capturing the potential spend, or is it just historical spend?
Yeah, that's a very good question, George. The reason we pioneered this aspirational value is we found a number of clients, their current mechanism is around wallet size and wallet share. The wallet size is pretty much derived through a set of focus groups and market research. So we found that to be somewhat theoretical. We think it clearly has found, value in companies, but what we found is a lot more scientific way of figuring out what is it that we could actually get at. That's why we came up with a much more simplistic, easily derivable, a metric called aspirational value, which looks at high water mark over a certain time window in the past based on different industries. And though you have to normalize and harmonize, there are certain algorithms that you have to apply in a methodology about how to derive that aspirational value. We find that to be a lot more effective, a lot more concrete, that is grounded in actual data. And that's the reason we use this metric. Now, of course, if you can close that gap, there's clearly headroom beyond that aspirational value, because the client probably, your customer, had a lot more potential spend, which is the wallet size of that customer. But what we are saying is we are finding customers not even closing the aspirational gap, let alone get at the wallet size of the customer.
First things first.
Exactly. Crawl, walk, run.
Okay. Got another question on another topic, and this one I think I can answer. Is your framework only applicable to B2C cases? And I'll answer it. Feel free to interject as well. Yes, in this webinar, we focused on business-to-consumer case studies, but the analytics framework does apply to business as well. I mean, the parameters vary, of course, but we found that many of the use cases that are targeting business to consumers, for a lot of companies, when they target the small business segment in B2B, like small office, home office, or SMB, there are lots of similarities, and the same framework applies. And for mid-size and large companies, the models, of course, change a little bit, and you have to take into account different data sets. But the overall framework and the underlying layers about customer intelligence layer and the signals, they still do apply. Lex, any additional comments?
No, I think that's right. I don't think this is any unique to B2C concept. It's something actually Opera applies to our own business. And of course, B2C, where you have a lot of data, you can apply a lot of algorithms. And if you have, in a B2B situation, if you have 20 clients, you don't need a Signal Hub platform to be able to do this and sustain this. So it lends itself easily a lot more to B2C, where the complexity, the volume, and the number of customers. But if you're a B2B company and you have in the tens of thousands of customers, I think this clearly applies as well.
All right. Okay, another question on a different topic. The reference to the euros in the telecom operator, where the 96 million annualized, the increase in revenue, and I know how, yes, the answer, we didn't put it in the presentation, but yeah, the 96 million change was based on an annual basis. Another question is, how does your solution compare to a BI, business intelligence tool? And it's a two-part question. And do I have to replace mine if I'm already using one?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it, George. BI tools, to us, they are kind of a technology that is done kind of one question, one query at a time, and it's not production. So the BI tools help some marketing analyst or a pricing analyst or merchandise analyst to be able to go and export data and you have to come up with a question to be able to go find the answer, and eventually, based on the answer, somehow come up with a tactic or a price or a campaign idea to be able to go target it. What we are talking about in Signal Hub is ability to operationalize. It's a capability, it's an operational capability that allows you to scale your business initiatives based on a very accurate and up-to-date understanding of customers. So BI tool is paradigm that requires human beings to be able to operationalize, whereas Signal Hub is something once you operationalize, it's an operational capability that is talking to your operational systems like CRM and your websites and so on and so forth. So it's a very different paradigm.
All right. This question I think I can take. It's does your solution run in the public cloud? And we do offer Signal Hub as a public cloud offering, but we also offer it on-premise as a software. We found that many of our customers do choose to run it in the private cloud, so we offer both approaches. Another question that came in about the this is about the retailer, if I'm not mistaken. It's saying, was marketing that drove the business case or finance?
To me, the retailer, the business case was actually driven by the business leader that was looking to fill a revenue gap that they had. So they had loyalty programs, their marketing, their insights teams, but it was really driven by the person that owned the P&L to be able to find a transformative ways of filling a very large and substantial revenue gap quickly. So it involved marketing, eventually involved finance, because you have to work with finance to agree on a measurement mechanism so the customer P&Ls can be kind of acceptable and have a lot more rigor to it. But it was neither driven by business, marketing or finance. It was driven by the business leader wanting to come up with a way to generate revenue quickly to be able to plug that gap that they had in their business.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have one more time for? I think we can squeeze in one more question. What are the examples of machine learning algorithms used in your wireless telecom example? And I think I can answer some of that. We used we use multiple type of models. Some were used for need states identification, cohort analysis. We used things like k-means clustering. In the response model to individual offers, we use logistic regression. And for the feedback loop, this self-learning loop algorithm that ended up using explore and exploit, we ended up using reinforced machine learning system overall. So hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if this was adequate, but at this stage, I think we can conclude the webinar. Thank you very much for all of you attending. Feel free to visit us at www.operasolutions.com. If you have any questions, you have our emails. Don't hesitate to contact us directly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.